35 seconds from the runway, Air Canada Flight 143 had no engines, no flaps, no speed brakes, and it was still too high to land. Normally, the pilots could add power and go around. But there was no power. The Boeing 767 had run completely out of fuel. So Captain Bob Pearson did something normally associated with gliders. He turned the airliner sideways. That manoeuvre may have saved 69 lives, because by then the failure chain was almost complete. This is a disaster that didn't happen. On 23rd of July 1983, Air Canada Flight 143 was flying from Montreal to Edmonton, with a stop in Ottawa. The aircraft was a Boeing 767. New, computerised, and operating during Air Canada's transition to metric measurements. Before departure, its fuel quantity indication system was not working correctly, so the amount of fuel on board had to be calculated manually. That should still have been safe. The tanks could be measured, the volume could be converted into fuel mass, but the 767 measured fuel in kilograms. Most of Air Canada's older aircrafts used pounds, and during the calculation, the wrong conversion factor was used. The aircraft needed roughly 22,300 kilograms of fuel. Instead, it departed with roughly 22,300 pounds, less than half the amount required. Then came another chance to catch it. At Ottawa, the fuel was checked again. The same calculation was repeated. The same answer appeared, and Flight 143 took off. At cruising altitude, the first fuel pressure warning appeared. Pearson decided to divert to Winnipeg. Then the left engine stopped. Moments later, the right engine stopped too. A Boeing 767 carrying 69 people was now a glider. And losing the engines meant losing much more than thrust. The normal generators stopped. Much of the cockpit instrumentation disappeared. A ram air turbine deployed into the airflow, providing enough hydraulic pressure to keep the main flight controls working. But the pilots had no normal engine power, no normal use of the flaps, no speed brakes, and no second attempt. They were descending, and they could not stop descending. First Officer Maurice Quintal calculated whether they could reach Winnipeg. They couldn't. They were losing altitude too quickly. Then Quintal remembered somewhere closer. Gimli, a former Royal Canadian Air Force base where he had previously served. Flight 143 turned towards it. What the pilots didn't know was that part of the old airfield was now being used as a motor racing facility. There were people on the runway, but Gimli was now the only realistic option. As the aircraft approached, the landing gear was lowered manually. The main gear locked. The nose gear did not. Then Pearson saw another problem. They were going to reach the runway, but they were far too high. That sounds better than being too low. It wasn't. Too low and they could crash before reaching the runway. Too high and they could overshoot it completely. Normally, Pearson could reduce speed with flaps, increasing drag with speed brakes, or add power and try again. He had none of those options, and now the chain looked like this. Fuel indication failure, wrong conversion, wrong fuel load, the mistake repeated, both engines gone. Winnipeg out of reach. 6 links had already closed. There was only one left to break. Pearson had extensive gliding experience, and he knew a manoeuvre that could make an aircraft descend much faster without gaining too much speed. A sideslip. By banking one way and applying opposite rudder, the aircraft moves partly sideways through the air, creating extra drag. It is a standard technique in light aircraft. Pearson was about to try it in a Boeing 767, with 69 people on board. Around 2 miles from the runway, and roughly 35 seconds of flying time remaining, he banked the aircraft, applied opposite rudder, and turned the Boeing sideways. The descent rate increased. The runway rose rapidly in the windscreen. For several seconds, Pearson held the aircraft in the slip. Then, just above the runway, he straightened it. Flight 143 touched down. The pilots braked as hard as they could. Tires blew. The unlocked nose gear collapsed. The aircraft scraped along the runway and finally stopped. There were people ahead of it, but it had stopped before reaching them. All 69 people survived. Flight 143 was not saved because the system worked. The system had already failed repeatedly. A faulty fuel indication system. Confusing procedures. A transition between measurement systems. The wrong conversion. A mistake repeated during a second check. By the time both engines stopped, the accident was already underway. Most failure chains end because someone had a chance to stop the chain and didn't. This one is different. Quintal found an airfield they could reach. The ram air turbine kept the aircraft controllable, and Pearson found a way to lose the altitude they desperately needed to lose. 35 seconds later, Flight 143 was on the ground. The chain had already formed. It just never reached the final link, because this time, someone broke it. The disaster didn't happen.